my name is Sheila Vaughan, and I'm also a very interested mother, you know, in what our chair is doing. You know, I've not really lost a child to gun and knife crime, but you know, I can feel the grief of the mothers, you know, and I just want to support. I'm just here to support this group as we move forward. Okay, thank you.
So Sound Waves was born out of a tragedy when we lost a young man at Marcus Lipton Center, I think, youth club or center. And that's when mothers started saying, well, we have nowhere to go and we need to do something about this. And so we got together as a group of mothers within the big local impact organization. So Big Local supports this program. And the mothers actually run, we say mothers, but actually it's all parents. We don't discriminate the fathers as well. So they got together and they run the organization. They run the project. It's a project within the organization. And they run the project as it is and organize things. It's a heavy responsibility because they have to share their lived experience with others and support others who have lived through it. And of course, every time something happens, it reminds or it triggers the trauma. So we are aware that it's a very, very sensitive issue, but that doesn't stop us from going ahead. There are not many organizations that support the parents who are grieving, and especially the mothers who are left without support at one point. Now, we have speakers. There are also other mothers in here. And I know that Tracy is one of the mothers who has suffered that grief as well. There were 6 of them, but we only have 2 today who have lost their children. What I want to say today is that the meeting always starts with a serenity prayer, and they have asked that serenity prayer is said today. So if Gordon can put it up to share. So everyone starts with that prayer. Whoever God you pray to, or a higher being, it's not really allocating you to any particular denomination or religion. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can,
wisdom to know the difference.
Thank you. I would like then to briefly introduce our speakers today. They're Lisa Wright, and I think they should actually introduce themselves because they have a better place to do that. And Anton Noble.
I'm originated from Birmingham, but live in Coventry. I am an ex-offender, but originally changed my life due to I had contact with God, and so I've turned my life around and born again. But also I changed my life around due to what happened to my older brother as well, which led me to that path as well. So I have very first experience on violence and been in the drama of it for mostly all my life. But recently, I now work with Assist Trauma Care, and we support gang members and youth that are involved in gangs, but also mothers and fathers who struggle with the grievance and also struggles with boundaries and putting things in place. So overall, I'm in the mix of the whole thing because I believe by my faith and also what I believe by my love, what's inside of me, the love that I received to come out of the gang life, I have to share it. And so I and the team with Lisa, we go around and support the youth in Northamptonshire, Coventry and Warwickshire at the moment. And me, myself know that trauma is a high thing in everyone's life, whether you're a kid, you're an adult and you're an older. And with violence, trauma is built into these kids like it's normal for them to get on with life, which is not normal. And so they're carrying stuff like a weight on them, which is coming as a burden, which this is why most ethnic groups and other groups that go into schools that are from that background, when they a smell or how people speak starts triggering their trauma, it comes into anger because they don't understand it, which is mostly why a lot of youths get kicked out of school because the teachers, many of them don't have the time to deal with it, so they just send them out instead of getting to know the kid on a one-to-one basis. This is what I and the team do for the kids. So we support the youth that are in that background, but they can't speak up for themselves. So we become their voice for them to speak. And we're a prevention, so we're there before it happens. But also myself, I work with the high risk kids that are involved in it. So most of the kids I've worked with, they have turned their life around and they have got it into a better destination. There's some kids that have lost their life that I have worked with, and there's some kids that are now in jail who I still have contact with, because I feel that even though the youth and even parents that witness this kind of stuff, you can't leave them. There's never a transition that you can leave them. They always need support in whatever they go through. And it may just be that the support may be lighter, where it's just checkups, but they still need support. And most of the kids that I've worked with in the past 5 years, the first kids that I've started off with, I still have contact with. Even though I'm very busy, I still have a relationship with them, because it's a relationship that builds trust. And as a professional, I think a lot of professionals that are involved in this kind of stuff, there's a lot of barriers. But myself, you have to emphasize and be in tune with the family. And sometimes professionalism makes a barrier for you to have contact with the parents on their real emotions. So me as a mentor, the most thing that I've listened to the mothers that are here now that I've lost, and those that have got a heart for it to help. There is a gap, and I believe, and I do believe that a lot of parents do get left, and it's when you lose I've lost friends to knife crime and to gun crime, but personally, I ain't lost none of my brothers and sisters, thank God. But I've lost close friends to knife crime, and there's always a hole. But in the mother's heart, I will never understand the mother's heart, because a mother's heart is very loving, and it's very strong, and it's also a protector. And a mother's heart loves loves to nurture, even when they, like my mother, when I was out doing what I was doing, my mother always prayed. She always prayed for me. Even when I was rebellion, she always prayed. Even when she couldn't control me, she always prayed for me. And a mother always watches. I'm not saying fathers don't, but mothers always watch over. It don't matter how far their children are, they always watch over. So I can't emphasize the deepness of loss when you lose a son, because I with my mum and father, I thank God I didn't go that far to do that. But all I can say is, with the work that I do and what I've experienced, with loss, I don't think you get over it, you get stronger. And I think the best thing that I've learned with loss is, if you can't get over it, you can look over it. And look, when I say look over it, it's not that you just carry on life like it's not there, but you carry on to make it positive for a better life. Like this group that you've done, out of the hurt and the loss that's happened, this is a blessing. Even though it came from a bad situation, you've made it into a positive, and you're uniting people together to feel the same pain, and have got the same heart to look after each other. And that's what a community needs, because violence does not happen in a community that everyone talks, which is why gang violence, which the gangs that I was involved with, they like to divide communities and put fear in communities so people don't want to speak. Back in my days, people used to give egg and milk to next door neighbours and stuff and look after each other. But nowadays, you don't see neighbours looking after one another. And I've been brought up, you have to look after your neighbours. You are your brother's keeper. So even though I was doing mistakes and badness, I still had moles in me that were right. But it's not that I was a bad person. I was a person that made bad mistakes, but in my heart I was good. And this is why I came to who I am now, because this is who I really am. I'm really a softened heart. I ain't really hardened, and my nature of myself has come out. And I think kids these days don't get a chance to come who they are because of social media and because of their influence around them. Like I always heard, to be a man, you can't cry and you can't show your emotions. And so many of these kids have been brought up like that. If they cry, you're a girl. If you cry, you're this, you're that. And that's a lie, because when you really get in contact with your heart, you do cry out emotional stuff and you do sob. But some of these kids have been taught to be hard-faced and not to show their emotions. But they really want to come to their mothers and fathers and show affection. But they've been around the wrong people in their community or who they look up to that's showing them what a man is. What I've noticed is the youth do not like to challenge what they learn no more. Meaning, like, if there's things going out, like we got taught sticks and stones will break your bones and words will never hurt you. In that poem, that rhyme, that's trauma. When I say that's trauma, because words do hurt you, and words kill. It don't kill. It may not hurt. May not kill the body, but it kills the soul, because words stay with your mind. And there's words that I got told when I was younger that's still in my mind, messed up my mind, still now. Even though it affects me, I don't let it control me. And there's some of these kids that have learned that words don't hurt you, but some of these kids that are doing wrong or are in a bad situation is because words have been put in their life and where their friends have said, you can't be this, you can't be that, and they've believed it and they've become it. And so with me and the team, we like to speak positive and words of encouragement, because only positive words bring virtue to change the youth. But with trauma, the only way to face trauma is you have to realize that you need help yourself first. To move from the first step that I've realized for myself, you have to come to yourself first, that you need help. And when you and yourself know that you need help, then others can help you. But it's hard to work with youth and adults that don't see the help for themselves first, because you can't force things onto people. It has to do with love. And I believe that trauma can be overcome by love. I believe love conquers all. And I believe it takes a whole of someone's being to comfort someone that's had loss in trauma. Not to cover the gap, because you'll never cover the gap of a lost son or a lost daughter or a loss in your family. But you can, but there's always a higher power, that what I believe, that will come into your life and will guide you through the hurt to make it positive. But the last thing I'm going to say, so I let Lisa carry on, because I don't think I've got many minutes left.
It's fine.
But I say to you all, those that have lost, I do pray that you carry on with the strength, because you're doing a marvelous thing, and what I've been taught is small steps make big beginnings and big endings. And don't see, because you may not see progress yet, that don't mean progress ain't been prepared for you in the long run. And there's always people watching, and I hope that this carries on, and I hope you blossom and spread your wings, and I pray for you all. And I'll let Lisa carry on with her bit.
Thank you, Anton.
Thank you, Anton. Your usual passion and love. My name's Lisa. I work with Anton at Assist Trauma Care. Our organisation provides support and therapy for people who have suffered traumatic bereavement, PTSD, maybe other trauma-related syndromes. Anton's work is very relevant to you because, as he said, he's had his own experience of gangs in a personal sense, but also he's working day in, day out, and has done for a number of years with young people who have become involved, and he's trying to help them see and help their families see a way out. My side of the work is dealing with people like yourselves who have been bereft through trauma and through traumatic bereavement. And I think there is no loss like a traumatic bereavement, except that of a child. And you have all experienced that double whammy of a traumatic bereavement and it's of a child. It's very complicated because losing a child is all the wrong way around. That's not how we grow up. You know, we grow knowing that one day we're going to lose our grandparents, we're going to lose our parents, and then we have our own children and we know that they're going to lose us and they're going to have to bury us or cremate us, however. So when you lose a child, life has become twisted. Life has become very, very wrong. And that experience shatters the way we see the world, because it's the biggest nightmare you could ever imagine. And that's a very extraordinary thing to have. I think any kind of bereavement will make us see the world differently, but quite often we work through that over a series of months or maybe even years, but we come to see the world similarly to how we did, partly because we've perhaps lost people in the same way other people have, and we find that comfort in others and we find that shared experience, and it's more common. You know, I've shared my own grief of losing both of my parents with other people who have lost both of their parents. It normalizes it, and it is part of that normal process. But something like this is very, very different. I run a group for parents who have lost children through road harm. So I have about 16 parents, mostly mothers, but I think there's about 6 fathers. So there's couples, and then there's 2 or 3 women who come on their own. And it's incredibly difficult work, but I also feel very privileged to be with them because they are so sharing and open and very wonderful at supporting each other. And as Anton pointed out, there's something that you're building here or have built here, which is about support. And where you've got that compassion and that understanding of what it might be like for somebody else to be feeling perhaps similar to your own, can be incredibly comforting. I think human beings try to be very kind and understanding when they know another person has lost somebody. But I think when you lose a child, there are many people who make very crass comments. I've had parents say to me, somebody came up to me and said, "Oh, I know how you feel. I lost my mother last year." And it's not comparable. It really isn't. I mean, some of you perhaps will have lost parents, so you know the difference. It is not on any level at all. I think there's also an expectation amongst the wider community that you will get over this. Give it time and you'll be all right. You'll move on. And you don't move on from this. You don't move on from the loss of a child. You're stuck with it. And it's painful and more difficult than anyone could imagine unless they've been through it. And it's something that you have to find a way, as Anton was saying, of living with it, managing it in whatever way you can. And some days you might be able to manage it and live with it, and other days it's an impossible task. And I think it's really important that you're kind to yourself, because any kind of traumatic bereavement, but again, we're talking about the worst type, because it affects the thinking that we have, the emotional aspect of it, our social aspect, whether we can continue working, whether we can continue socializing, or even bearing to speak to friends or anyone other than immediate family. And also the sort of the behavioural response, as well as the physiological responses. So all those things that happen to our physicality, the tiredness, the feeling sick, the constant aches and pains. These are things that you have to live with, that most people have no idea about, but they exist. A lot of the parents I work with in my group have had to either give up work. Some of them have been able to take early retirement. Some of them have been able to cut their hours down, but most of them are not able to work, or are working in a very different, limiting way. And so that's another area of your life that becomes hugely impacted. And that's another area that identifies us. If we work or if we have a particular role or we volunteer, that identifies us and defines us somehow, as does having a child. But suddenly that definition of ourselves is lost through the loss of our child. It's lost through not being able to function as we normally did. I think it's a very lonely sort of bereavement, because unless you find other people who've experienced it, there is this sense of nobody gets it. Nobody understands what I'm experiencing. Nobody understands what I've been through. And again, with the experience of this group, it's connected with the violence before and the trauma before the loss of your loved one as well. So there's another layer here of the amount of trauma that can be sort of part of your process now. And I think another thing which is very normal in grieving is the what ifs and the if onlys, and they generally surpass and we get over that part of our bereavement. But in the case of this kind of bereavement, it stays with you forever. And I think another aspect that I'd like to point out before we move on through the agenda is that role of being a parent, and the connection that we have with a child. I'm a parent, and having that, when a baby comes into your life, that you will do anything to save and protect that baby from any harm or any pain or hurt. and it's a huge sort of primitive feeling, and it goes way back, you know, that's just natural. You have no control over that, and that doesn't leave you, that stays with you, and it can make it very, very difficult, because there's that sense of, how do you protect this child who is no longer physically with you, but there's still that need, that desire to protect, which stays with us for forever. So the journey that you are on as grieving parents is huge. It's not wholly recognised, and it can be very lonely. What is wonderful is to know that there is this group, there is support, and there is a reaching out that you can do. But I think it's such a complex, I mean, you know, I can't touch it in the time that Anton and I have got, but I'm just skimming the surface of layers and layers of complex emotions that go with this kind of trauma. But being together, talking about it, sharing your experiences of your child alive, of your child now dead, but sharing how you feel, as well as those happy memories as well. There's something about, people sort of say moving on, and there's something about that feels scary, because if you move on, that's forgetting. And it's not about forgetting, but it is about finding a way to remember without that trauma, without that pain, whenever possible.
Okay, so as you can see, you've got 2 breakout rooms, and both breakout rooms will be covering both questions. Question 1, how does the tragic loss of a child impact on families, and what help do these families need most? And question 2, how has COVID-19 impacted these families?
Thank you everyone for attending today, and we will be continuing our work as to reaching out to parents and families who's gone through trauma or bereavement, and hopefully we're open to set up some Zoom meetings where other parents can come on board, and just to talk, or maybe to share, or to see what Soundwaves how we can support them and work alongside them, and hear the choices how they would like to move on with the next steps of their lives.
Do we have any feedback from the different rooms?
Really, how it's impacted, as trauma's impacted families, and the things that needs to be put in place. That's what our discussion was about. And with COVID-19, the greater impact it's on families as well.
Yeah, because we had quite a lengthy discussion ourselves, and we're looking at even the very fact that I think Lisa was very articulate, saying how grieving actually pulls families apart. Because each one of us is grieving differently. And so it takes a while to come together to start grieving. And we have known some families that have actually broken down because of grieving in different ways. Some people may just be go into some inertia state where they don't want to do anything, they don't want to move. Others want to do something else, to just be outside the home. And that can be difficult. So it creates a gap. And occasionally, not occasionally, quite often you find communication doesn't happen properly. Kwesi was also very articulate about the subject of trauma and support not being known very well amongst, especially the Black communities. People just exist. They don't think that they should be seeking for that help, especially for young people. You're just expected to live on and get on with your life, whichever way you know. they helped me, Lisa and Kwesi. There's we talked about people not even knowing what emotional well-being is all about, and even what trauma is about, because the help there is it's like a lottery. Some areas have it, some areas don't have it. So if your area doesn't have it, you don't get the support. And some people don't even want the support anyway. So we looked at the COVID-19, what it has done, and we thought it has created loneliness through various ways, because already people are struggling, and COVID-19 has removed that human touch, that particular connection that people had. So now, people are feeling isolated and lonely in a way that adds to the feeling that they are on their own, and especially if they lose a loved one within the family, there's bound to be more disconnection from the reality of life. So that's what we had. You can add on. Do you want to add on anything else?
Yes, we echo a lot of those comments that you've raised, and with particular reference, COVID-19, we said it definitely brought things like loneliness, isolation much more acutely. And basically things like, in some people's case, the anniversary of the death came around at the same time lockdown was happening. Maybe some people also lost their employment because of the industry in which they worked. So it's a loss of income, the loss of sort of regular exercise or routines meant you had only time to process your thoughts, and you needed help and support to even seek help, to realize that you were struggling and it's okay to reach out and get help, kind of thing. Yeah. And in some people's case, they found some of the young people were actually out because they're not used to spending so much time with their parents. And there was lots of conflict between what their expectations were. Some of them also experienced things like domestic violence, which was, again, another layer of trauma upon trauma upon trauma. Yeah. So it's about giving that space, and we definitely said if we could have something like a Zoom meeting, where people, like Yvonne said, could actually speak honestly and confidentially about some of the things that they're going through as a first step towards building, those bigger steps, kind of thing. And we were saying if there was somewhere like a local park, in some cases, even in lockdown, some people found it beneficial to just go for a walk with nature, in nature, and that helped to suppress some of the anxiety or stress, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Next, we will be hoping to do a Zoom meeting with some of these parents. Not a meeting, but just to talk with them and just to let them know that we are here. And we as Sandways, I do believe we will be meeting this week, and just to organize when we can do this, what next step for the parents on Zoom, so that they can participate and know that they're not out there by themselves.
Yeah, and we have the two workshops that we were doing before COVID came, which was on the who is bringing up our children, which of course leads into how our children tend to be driven into or directed into ways or gangs or doing things that they shouldn't. So who is bringing up our children? We have 2 workshops coming on that as well. Yeah.
That's what's next.
Yes, yes.
So we hope that you can join us. I think the chair will give a vote of thanks for that, you know, for everyone.
Yeah, I do. I thank you all for participating and coming on. Lisa, thank you for your talk, and Anton, it was really useful, and would like to get your details if that's okay. And Kwasi, thank you for coming, and Wendy and everyone, thank you for your time. Thank you for taking your time out to spend time with Soundwaves, and I hope we can all meet again.